Hello, everybody. Andre Khatchaturian, Armenian Sports News Podcast. We are back again with so much to talk about. I'm here with my co-host Jason Takhtadjian, coming from Fresno, California. Jason, how are you today?
I am doing good, man. I will admit it has been quite the hectic past week, whether it's, work or flying to Vegas, or at least trying to make it to my flights to Vegas and then celebrating the birthday in Vegas. Actually getting to catch some Armenian sports happenings in action in
Yeah,
Vegas. And then coming back into Fresno, back to the grind and back in the podcast. And like you said, we have quite the list of topics to talk about, especially in the combat sports world.
yeah. And first of all, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Big 28, 27,
27, 27.
27. No, so that's incredible. You were home in Vegas celebrating your birthday, and you were able to see an interesting promotion, Tough Enough, which with up and coming Armenian fighters were on that card. One of them was David Magoyan, who walked out with Arman Tsarukyan at that event, and you were able to see that happen.
Yep.
And um, Magoyan secured the victory, and Tsarukyan made another appearance the following night at the UFC Apex. And you
That's
weren't,
right.
but Edmen
Unfortunately,
Shahbazyan,
I wasn't there. That was my birthday day. But
you
yeah,
gotta live your life.
yeah.
Uh, Edmen Shahbazyan was there though. A day after his brother Leon Shahbazyan at the same Tough Enough event, he won his fight. Edmen goes out there and looks vintage at like vintage Edmen. Like he looked like when he was undefeated. Edmen, first round knockout in minute and 30 seconds, something like that. Absolutely looked dominant. Didn't break a sweat. He looked like he can fight again this coming week. He said that that was the new dad power that he got. He said, "This is the dad strength. I'm a dad now, so I think this is the dad strength. It's amazing. I want to dedicate this victory for my kid. Hopefully, this is a 50G performance for him." And it was a 50G performance for his new son. Um, an incredible victory for Edmen, putting himself back on the map against, again, Dylan Butka, not the biggest fighter, but Edmen needed a win like this. He's been having a win loss type of situation. I think he had lost 5 of his last 7 fights coming into Saturday night. So a win like that, definitely a huge boost to his confidence.
I agree completely, Andre. Like you said, this was probably one of the best case scenarios for him to have this fight finish in the first round with a knockout, to kind of just get himself back in that track of, headed towards, get a few wins together. And who knows when we could see Edmund start to fight against, top 15 contenders in his weight class. That's, I think, ultimately what a lot of Armenian fans are a little eager to see Edmund go ahead and fulfill because, again, he's not necessarily old. He's still what is he, 27? Yeah,
Yeah,
27 years
very
old.
young.
So he's my age. He still has so much ahead of him. And like you said, a big knockout, especially in Vegas. Like he said to you in the interview, he's very comfortable in Vegas. He calls himself Vegas Edmond. So this is something definitely positive for him to build off of. And if his next couple fights are in Vegas, who knows where this is going to take him. Like I said, I want to see him start fighting some top contenders, but he needs to put a few wins together first.
Yeah, middleweight division looks very difficult. You have some tough fighters in the top 15 right now. Starting off with Bo Nickel, who's supposed to be the face of that division. He's number 15 right now, 7-0. And then you go further up the rankings. Anthony Hernandez has a 6 fight win streak. You go even further up, you got number 6 ranked sorry if I butchered this name, Kyle Borralho. He's got a 14 fight win streak,
Yeah.
and and then you have guys, former champions like Robert Whitaker, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland. They're in the top 5, along with Khamzat Chimaev, who everyone expects him to get the title shot against
That's right.
Dricus du Plessis next, and of course a guy that Edmund fought, Nazardine Imavov. He's the number 1 contender right now. Some people think he should be getting the title shot against Duplessis. Uh, Edmen Shahbazyan is one of those guys who thinks that you know Nasruddin should get that title shot. That loss definitely looks good on Edmund's resume. When you look back at it now, it's always good to see if you're gonna lose, you want that guy to at least go on and maybe be a champion one day. So uh,
Yeah.
uh,
I'm just looking at the other ranked fighters, and you're right. This is such a stacked top 15. You still have guys like Eden Machado, Gary, Joaquin Buckley, who's on a major winning streak. Kamaru Usman's, fallen down, but am I looking at the wrong rankings? I think I'm
Uh,
looking at the wrong rankings. I'm looking at
yeah.
the wrong rankings. My
Uh,
my apologies, but I think still the point is still there because Martin Vittori, we didn't even mention him. Jared Cannonier, he just had a win, and these are all guys that again, like you said, major competitors, and it's going to be tough for Edmund to kind of break into, but not impossible if you have a first round knockout to build off of.
yeah, you were looking at the welterweight rankings.
Yeah, yeah, I was looking at that right next to each other, and I'm just like, I'm one step over.
No, that's okay. But yeah, I think if you're Edmund, you take this victory, you're happy about it, you get 50 G's, and then you're still 27, like you said. There's no need to rush back into the picture. Let the let the environment kind of work its way, work out itself, like the top 15, see what happens. Maybe like, again, you're 27. If the ultimate goal is to be champion, you have time. Uh, kind of just if I were him, I would, take some time off again, be a dad, come out maybe International Fight Week in July in Vegas, take a fight then. Maybe it doesn't have to be against a top 15 opponent. Just get your confidence back. And I think that was the first step in getting his confidence back because if he wants to put himself in that title picture, it's going to take some time and a lot of other stuff needs to happen. And there seems like a lot of other guys who are gunning for that title shot right now. And but again, we'll take the win. It's been a long time
Right.
for Edmund, and we're all very proud of him as he got that big W, and with the dad strength, Jason, the dad strength. So, uh, upcoming this week, we have another Armenian fighter who has had his ups and downs throughout his career. Melsik Baghdasaryan will be fighting in UFC Seattle this Saturday night. And he is scheduled to face Gene Silva. This is a tough opponent at UFC Seattle, and he'll be on the main card. Melsik will. It's the second fight on the main card, and I'm interested to see how he does because Melsik he started off strong in the UFC. He won his first two fights. First fight was that crazy head kick knockout, and this was back in July 2021 and then follow that up with a big win, a unanimous decision win in New York City, UFC 268. I was there at that fight. And then, he had some momentum going on after a big knockout win and then a big win at Madison Square Garden. Followed that up with a submission loss in Australia to Josh Kulabau in February 2023. That was 2 years ago, though, now. And then in July 2023, he got a unanimous decision victory against Tucker Lutz. And if you're Armenian, you like that name, Lutz. He basically lutzed all over Tucker Lutz. So big victory there. But then he hasn't fought
Yeah.
since then. That was July 2023. Since that time, Jason, I gotten married and celebrated my first anniversary. And you have moved from Iowa to Fresno and are now
Yeah.
the face of Armenian Sports News. So a lot has happened in that year and a half. And he had some injuries, Jason, throughout
Yeah.
that year and a half.
He did. He did have some injuries, and that resulted in, whether it was on his accord or even his opponent's accord, resulting in three different fights being canceled 2024. And they were all fights that, when you look at it, there were, fights that were really interested to see Melsik kind of continue to flex his muscles, try to, get back into the winning column. For example, against this Tajik fighter, Mohammed Naimov, who used to be coached by an Armenian coach, Gor Yeritsyan, who is now a matchmaker for Tough Enough. But that's a story for another day. He also had a fight against Haider Amil, who's part Turkish. That's all I have to say. And then against Willem Gomez, I believe Melsik actually didn't pull out of that fight. Gomez
Gomez
went
pulled
to the
out.
weigh-ins and it looked like he was sick. He was about to pass out, and I think it was just the weight cut got to him, so he had to pull out of that fight.
Yeah, and Gene Silva's his opponent on February 22nd. We're recording this on Tuesday. We're going to speak with Melsik hopefully later on this week. And Gene Silva's a hell of an opponent for Melsik. This guy has never lost in the UFC. Granted, he has only had 3 UFC fights. Debuted in the UFC in January 2024 with a knockout win against Weston Wilson. Followed that up in June 2024 with a knockout win against Charles Jourdain. And then literally 2 weeks later, I'm not reading this wrong. 2 weeks later, he came and beat Drew Dauber, who's a veteran of the sport, with another knockout. So
Yeah,
uh,
3 fights in 6 months.
3 fights in 6 months. Hasn't fought since July,
Yeah,
but has a very impressive resume. He's in 11 knockouts in his professional career. And if his
yeah,
first
and
win,
he's on an 11 fight winning streak that extends to the end of 2018.
yeah.
So,
So
like you said, this is a serious opponent. Melsik has an advantage with the reach and the height, but ultimately this guy, he's a serious fighter, and he's also a bit of a lunatic too.
Gene Silva,
Yeah.
it's gonna be. I think I haven't looked at the odds yet, but I would assume that Melsik is the underdog in this fight. But
I would assume you're correct. I would assume you're correct on that. I'm just not exactly sure how heavy, but we'll find out.
I would say if Gene Silva gets a big win here, you might have to start putting him as a ranked fighter.
Yeah.
Again,
According
featherweight.
to, oh, my apologies to cut you off, but
Go
according
ahead.
to
Go ahead.
ESPN Bet, Gene Silva is a heavy favorite. He's minus 725, and Melsik is plus 450.
Well, there you go. So there's some strong odds for you if you want to bet on Melsik. Uh,
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about a guy very talented, Melsik, but hasn't fought in a year and a half against a guy who's maybe one of the up and comers. So this is a big challenge for Melsik too. It's a chance for him to show that none of that rust, hasn't he hasn't he's not affected by the rust. And as far as Melsik goes, I mean, he's kind of a knockout artist as well. Melsik has 5 knockouts. 5 of his 8 wins are knockouts. Um, this might be an electric, like a fight of the night candidate. If it could turn into something like that.
Yeah,
So
I'm not expecting a grappling exchange, like a major grappling exchange, unless maybe, the fight weighs on, they get tired. But like you said, I think they're going to be on their feet striking each other.
yeah, but that's the thing. 2 of Melsik's losses have been on the ground. There were 2 submissions
Yeah.
uh, in his career. One of them was his first career fight. So that was way back in 2014. But his only UFC loss was to Josh Kulabau. It was a submission. So uh, maybe Gene Silva tries to take this as a ground. He's a Brazilian fighter. The Brazilians are always known for being better on the ground. But
It'll be tough to see.
Gene Silva, he's a knockout specialist. He hasn't had a submission victory in the UFC. I think Melsik needs to take this to the distance and, maybe tire out. Usually knockout artists, when they think of knockout artists, their cardio isn't as great. They maybe gas themselves in the first round trying to get a knockout, and in the second, third round they tire out. So maybe that's Melsik's strategy to take this to the distance. Melsik does have a unanimous decision victory. His last 2 wins were unanimous decision victory. So he might be able to do something there. We'll see. That's Saturday night. Melsik, a huge underdog. I'll be all over that just to cheer for the Armenian and make a pretty penny if he does actually get the victory.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Those are some good odds. If you want to make some good money.
yeah. And then down the road in March, we have another fight this Saturday as well. Jason, boxing. Gor Yeritsyan is back in the ring. It's a
That's
busy
correct. I think
weekend.
it's on Friday, no? I
Is
think
it
it's
on
on Friday.
Friday?
Yeah.
The Gor Yeritsyan, he's back in the ring.
Yep.
19-1 record. He's fighting a guy named Luis Hernandez at Hollywood Fight Nights on February 21. Correct. It is on Friday. What do you think here for Gor Yeritsyan?
I mean, I'm glad that he, bounced back and won a fight after losing his first fight in his professional career against a fellow Armenian as well in a split decision. That's obviously got to be tough for him. But again, he's already bounced back, had that fight back in the end of October of last year against Jonathan Romero, and he won with a knockout in the fifth round. So, I mean, a technical knockout. So against Luis Hernandez, um, Gor Yeritsyan, he's looking for number 20. I think he needs to just continue on the streak of getting back on track and winning. And Luis Hernandez, I don't think is going to be that much of a tough test for him. I think Gor Yeritsyan, he's going to get back on the saddle per se and get more competitive fights. I think.
Hernandez has lost 6 of his last 8 fights, including the last
Yeah.
3 he's lost. So, yeah, this is a get right situation for Yeritsyan. I know he already had a knockout win. Uh, in October of 2024. But this will help him kind of get back more in the winning trend and establish some sort of a winning streak here. It's tough to lose in boxing, but he's only 30 years old. He's still relatively young, and hopefully he can bounce back from this and get a string of wins. Gor Yeritsyan. Cool. So, Jason, what else? What else do we have?
Well, I mean, let's kind of rewind a little bit, right? Let's rewind back to Vegas because this
Okay.
past weekend not only was UFC Fight Night happening at the Apex with Edmen Shahbazyan fighting, but there was a smaller promotion called Tough Enough, and it was Tough Enough 141. It was held in the Sahara Casino Hotel in Las Vegas in this really small, intimate venue. It was actually quite the experience. And yeah, Leon Shahbazyan, Edmen's brother, was fighting in the main event. And that's not what was initially intended. Leon's fight was not supposed to be the main event. The main event got canceled 2 days prior to the fight. So Edmen's fight got moved up, or Edmen's fight, Leon's fight got moved up. And he was an underdog. I don't remember exactly what the odds are because it's a little bit difficult to find out what those odds are. Maybe we can do a Google search. But the fact of the matter is, everybody I spoke to was rooting for the other guy, Leon's opponent, who I'm trying to pull up right now, Aaron Tavares, and another Brazilian who had a decent record. He was 7-2 going into this fight. Leon was 8-4. Now he's 9-4 because he knocked his opponent, or he submitted his opponent with a guillotine choke in the first round. He wobbled his opponent with a really nice, I believe, left hook, wobbled him down, got him down to the ground, got him into the guillotine, and everybody was just celebrating. Leon immediately ran out of the cage and ran to some of his friends and family and just started celebrating. Edmund wasn't there because his fight was the night before, so it's understandable.
This fight
But
was the
that was a
next day.
massive way to end that sort of promotion because we mentioned a little bit earlier, he wasn't the only Armenian fighter on the promotion. David Magoyan ended up becoming 6-0 in his career after a win in that card, and that was the fight prior. So it was a co-main, and there were 2 or 3 different fights that had dropped out. So the Armenians ended up taking over the co-main in the main event of this card for Tough Enough, and they ended up winning.
It sounds like an exciting Friday night at the
Yeah,
Sahara, Jason.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean Leon Shahbazyan, big weekend for the Shahbazyan family. Good for them. He deserve it. Leon's a good kid too. Hopefully one day we'll see him in the UFC. I think we're gonna see David Magoya in the UFC pretty soon.
Yeah.
We'll probably have Armand vouching for him too. So this is a guy I think we'll see very, very soon in the UFC. Um,
Agreed. I mean, Armand was there with David McGoyan, and we were there to document that. He walked out with him, and during the in between the rounds, it was Armand that was going into the cage to actually coach up McGoyan and get his arms all. I'm not too sure what they do, but they just basically bring feeling back to his arms because he was constantly wrestling and
so
had his arms over
question
his opponent.
was you would say that David kind of dominated that fight, even though it was unanimous decision?
Absolutely, because David basically had control of his hip and was ragdolling him for the entire fight. And whenever he wasn't, they were standing up and they were exchanging some combinations, and it was David who actually cracked his opponent, and he started bleeding too.
That's awesome. So that's his third fight now in the States. So he's definitely trying to angle for a UFC contract. And granted, it was a dominant win. It was his first win that was not a finish, though. So hopefully that doesn't hurt him. He has 5 other knockouts up in his resume. Let's shift gears now to the pitch,
Hmm.
where Armenia finally, the National Federation, Football Federation of Armenia, finally made a hire for a manager. And they went over to the Netherlands and they said to a man named John Vanterskip, say, John, you want to be our coach? And John said yes. So now John Vanterskip is the new manager for the Armenian national team. And I don't know much about him. Never heard of him before yesterday or when I read the news. But Jason, you're the soccer guy here. What do you know about him, and what should Armenians expect?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I had to do some research too whenever they made this announcement, okay? I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I talked to my uncle, okay? He is the guy who loves 80s and 90s, soccer and football. And he didn't even remember this guy. He was like, oh, that's right. He was on that team with the other Ajax and Dutch legends like Ruud van Nistelrooy. Like I look, he is a player. He scored 29 goals for Ajax back in the day between his 11 years, and then went to Italy to play in Genoa, which going to Italy in the 90s was like the trend in football. Everybody wanted to be in Italy. But when it comes to him being a manager, because we could talk about all these guys being players all we want. I mean, Raul, the Real Madrid legend, was linked to Armenia. It was a rumor, though. Um, but when we're talking about the managerial career, about a guy who the Armenian national team has hired a year and a half until the FIFA World Cup, 2026 World Cup is here. We're talking about a guy who doesn't necessarily have the best track record. Again, like I said, he made his mark in the world of football playing for Ajax. And whenever he became a manager, he then coached Ajax. And most recently, he coached Ajax in the 2023-2024 season, and that was it. He was signed on, and his contract was terminated after 1 year because he led Ajax to its worst finish in their league since 1999, 2000. Fifth place. Ajax is known historically for always either being first or second, at least in modern football, and their youth program being bar none in the entirety of European football, maybe in the entirety of football around the world. Yet this guy led Ajax to a really bad result. I get it. There's some, issues with management and, the uppers that's out of his control. But let's take a step back. He coached Greece between 2019 and 2021. They didn't really do much. And there are even Armenian Greek fans in our page that are saying that this is a terrible hire. And I trust them because they're a first-hand account. But if we even pull back even more, his managerial career started in the late 90s. And some of the most notable teams that he's coached are teams that you don't want to be necessarily tied to, like Guadalajara Chivas. Okay. Melbourne Heart, Melbourne City, Pegswall. Like, we're talking about going around the world, going to these semi all right club jobs like Australia, or going back to the Netherlands because you have that cachet. But for me, it's a little bit confusing because for the Armenian national team, especially understanding a lot of these players and where they're coming from, their age, the language barrier. Like, for example, this guy's going to most likely try to communicate in English. I don't see what other language he's going to communicate in other than English. And I think that's for a team as small as Armenia, I would have liked to see maybe a coach from the Armenian Premier League, an Armenian coach from the Armenian Premier League, maybe get a chance. And unfortunately, I'm not too well versed, but I believe Noah's coach is an Armenian coach at Noah FC. And Noah, they're not going to let him go. But I'm just giving an example of how this works elsewhere, where you give these sort of coaches an opportunity to build a sort of culture and then attract these bigger names to come and coach Armenia. Uh, I don't know. What do you think, Andre?
I it's a I'm based upon what you're saying, and based upon what's happened with the federation, I am wondering if this is, again, this isn't like the NFL where, after the season, there's like a bunch of reports about who a certain team is interviewing for their coaching job, and then they make a hire. And but I feel like the best jobs, I'm using NFL as a reference because that's the sport I know the best. In the NFL, best coaching jobs, every year there's like 6, 7 coaching jobs. The best ones are always filled up immediately. Like last year, the Chargers job was a good job. They had a good roster, and that was filled up immediately by Jim Harbaugh. And boom, like they got the guy, they got the best available coach, and they were the most attractive offer, being to live in LA with a great quarterback and all that stuff. So I'm guessing with Armenia, maybe the Armenia, for comparison, the Armenian national football team isn't like the Chargers in this case. They are they're more like the New Orleans Saints job. If you
Yeah,
like, they're not an attractive place to take a job, so you're going to
bingo.
get a less qualified candidate, and it's going to take a long time to make that hire, which it's February. The team is playing next month against Georgia in the very important Nations League playoff. I will say this though, I went back and looked at Greece's national games when Armenia played Greece, and uh, so let me get before I believe he got hired by Greece in 2019, Van de Skip,
Yes.
right? It was July 2019, and then his first task was to do the Euro qualifying, and he lost his first match against Finland, and then later on that year in a Euro qualifying match, Greece beat Armenia 1-0 with Vantaskip as the head coach, as the manager for Greece on November 2019. So that's
Hmm.
just a fun fact, I
And that's
guess.
probably the little, honestly, that could have been what sparked the Armenian Federation to hire him, is that familiarity. I genuinely believe that if they didn't play, they probably wouldn't have hired him.
But he had some good results. I'm looking at the other results. 2020 obviously was the COVID year. He had wins against Kosovo, Moldova, Cyprus, Moldova. Again, teams that they should be beating, they beat, which is good because Armenia sometimes struggles against teams that they should be beating. And then in the 2022 World Cup qualifiers, he earned a 1-1 draw against Spain and Belgium in the friendly 1-1 draw. So those are some good results.
They're friendlies. They are good
No, no, no. The
results.
Spain was a World Cup qualifier. In Spain, he earned a 1-1 draw. That's
Hmm.
probably his best result after looking at everything here. Um,
Probably. Yeah,
when did he
probably.
get fired? Can you pull that up for me?
When did he get fired from the Greek national team?
Yes.
In 2021.
When in 2021? It says here
Oh, that's a good question. I would assume in the summer.
December 2021, New Year's Eve. So they said,
There
Happy
you
New
go.
Year. You are now no longer our coach. So he was with them all of 2021. They basically failed to qualify for the World Cup in 2022, and then they let him go. Um, and I don't even remember. And did they make the Euros? They did not. They did not make the Euros. The most recent Euros. They didn't make the Euros, but that was without him. So they didn't make the World Cup. But again, I'm looking at some results here to backtrack, and you know, there's some stuff to like here. They beat Sweden 2-1 in the World Cup qualifier. That's a big win. And they beat Georgia. In fact, they beat Georgia in the World Cup qualifier 2-0 as well. And maybe that's why that's another attractive quality in him that the Armenian Federation saw, and they said, "Oh, you've beat Georgia before, and we're happy to play against Georgia in this really important match. Maybe you can have some insight on how you beat Georgia." I don't know. I'm just trying to grasp straws here and be.
I understand. I totally understand what you're doing, and I get it. It's trying to understand why Armenia made this hire and this specific person. And I
He only
genuinely think,
he only had one loss in 2020, and then he only
right,
had three losses in 2021, and those three losses were against Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland. Those are all like legitimate countries that
yes,
play in the World Cup regularly.
as much
Especially
as that
Spain,
is, yeah,
huh?
as much as that is accurate, I'm not saying anything wrong. That's 4 or 5 years ago, and his most recent managerial bout had him underperform with arguably the best squad and best individual players in the Eredivisie. So the point that I'm trying to make is now this guy has to create those sort of results with the Armenian players that we have that is currently on the national team. And I think you were alluding to it earlier, and that is this coaching process dragged on for a while because not a lot of people wanted to get on board. They weren't sold with what Armenia was doing. They weren't sold with the
That's
talent that Armenia
yes,
had,
I
and they
agree with
weren't
that.
sold with their results.
And
And
you look
now
and if
this
you're
you can see this as a best case result for that situation because you have a coach who, has some sort of background, has some sort of experience that not a lot of coaches have because he played in those glory days with Ajax. Um, but it's I think it's another situation that we have almost like Alexander Petrikov where we have to wait and see because he could go on and win the first 3 4 games or have like a really good start to his coaching tenure, but if he fizzles out towards the end like we have seen multiple times in history, we're going to have a fizzle out happen for a World Cup, qualification that has been made technically easier now more than ever in the past. And I think we might be stuck in another loop in the next couple of years of another head coach. I like the stat that I read, or I found out a couple of days ago, was this is Armenia's 28th head coach since, becoming a team, which was back in 1992.
Sure. Yeah. Those are not great stats. And another thing I want to add that supports your case is, any job that you're interviewing for, when you hear rumblings that their best employee had issues with management, and the best employee has since moved on and is still thriving elsewhere. Their best employee in this case I'm talking about is Henrik Mkhitaryan. And if you hear rumblings like that, that's like an automatic red flag in any job, in any career, to stay away from that job and not take that job, because there's clearly issues with management. So I'm wondering if that kind of stuff was going on with other candidates where they said, I'm not going to take this job. I heard the rumblings that have gone on with your best employee, and now he's off elsewhere doing great. And I'm not interested. So
I agree with you 150% on that, because we're talking about not just any player in Henrik Mkhitaryan. Like, he is well known for non-Armenians in Europe. He is so well versed in the entire world of football, knows so many people, whether it's coaches, agents. I mean, his agent was the late Mino Raiola. It was one of the best known agents who had the biggest net of players. And Mkhitaryan has that access and has access. Who's to say if he had a better relationship with the Armenian Federation, maybe he doesn't play for the national team, but he helps them get a better coach, helps them get better players, helps them recruit, helps them do this type of stuff. It doesn't seem like he has any hand or any involvement whatsoever, and it seems like he doesn't want to have any involvement. And like you said, for anybody who wants to join and hop shit for the Armenian national team, that's something that they have to consider, is that relationship dynamic. Why did that happen? How did that falling out happen? What might happen to me?
yeah, I agree with you. I'm just trying to be glass half full and say this man had good results with, a similar national team, Greece. I know Greece won the Euros, but they're not a I think they're more similar to Armenia than most people think. Like,
Yeah, their best player nowadays. It's not like, the Samaras days, Georgios Samaras days. Now their best player is a fullback that is a backup for Liverpool, Kostas Tsimikas. So,
right.
I mean, they
So
don't have the name
similar,
value nowadays.
yeah. So, and when you get results like tying Spain and beating Sweden, I think that's an attractive hire, and especially the fact that he did last beat his last win was against Georgia before he left the Greek national team. So just trying to be glass half full. I don't even think the glass became half full, maybe became a quarter full, but that's the hire. Armenia will be going to the World Cup qualifiers with John Vantaskip as the skip. So
I would be remiss if I didn't mention this before we move on,
yeah,
and that is, you do remember the rumors surrounding Edward Spurtsian going to Ajax. This is an interesting hire, just based off of remembering those rumors, because, I mean, let's be honest, we talked about it multiple times. Spurtsian is wasting his career in Russia right now. He needs to get going, and if he moves to Ajax, this might not actually be the best time, because their stock is kind of low and they need reinforcements. So who knows? Who knows if this is a play for the future as well?
yeah. Well, Spurgeon's got to perform better in order to
Absolutely.
get better
That's a
jobs.
given. That's a given.
You're not going to get a good job if you're not doing a good job in your in a current job. So that's how it works, Jason. That means when you wake up in the morning, you show up to work on time. You do a good job there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm not. My family's not a media mogul, so I got to do a good job every day.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of topics today,
Yes.
Jason. We hit it hard. We did it well, and it's time to move on with our days. This was a fantastic episode of ASN Podcast. We hope you join us next time. Before I go, I want to give a special thank you to my good friends and future of Armenian wrestling and MMA, Nico Sahakian and Grigor Chalakian. Look at this. Look at this, Jason. Look at this shirt.
Stand up for everybody.
Wrestle Works.
There you go.
Send me this shirt, and it has ASN's logo on it, which is really
Yep.
cool. And then Chalakian Chiropractic, which is proud sponsor of UFC Seattle fights with Melsik Baghdasaryan this week.
There you go.
And then on the back, you have a silhouette of Grigor Chalakian. So
that's an awesome shirt,
and
I'm waiting for mine too, guys.
Sure, you can contact them to find information of
absolutely
how to purchase one of these, and you should get on that. They're great. They're the future of Armenian wrestling, Armenian MMA. So, and Edmen Shahbazyan, I asked him about them, and he's very excited about them continuing their careers. And I think it was maybe Grigor or Nico. They on the comment they said, yeah, he used to beat us up when we were 8 years old.
Like that was Nico, yeah.
Nico, yeah, that's an awesome story. We'll have to ask him about that next time we talk to him. All right, Jason, you be well. Enjoy the rest of your week, and until next time.
Likewise.